What's up, you guys? It's Jason from RPM. I know we've been gone for a little while. We just got moved into our temporary research and development, dyno, and engineering building, so that's kind of where we're at. We got a bunch of videos to catch up on, and we're gonna knock out a bunch of information and new stuff, and some old stuff that we just haven't filmed yet for the Pro R P90X clutch. Some of the stuff carries on to other models, but we're just gonna jump straight into it and start talking about it, showing you some stuff. This kind of be a little information and a little instructional video, starting with a lot of titanium parts. So we've got P90X secondary clutch bolts. These are the ones that hold the helix in, titanium. All the torque specs and everything and how much they weigh and how much less they weigh are on our website. But we have them, clutch weight bolts with nylon locking nuts. These are what hold your primary clutch weights in. This is your secondary clutch bolt, titanium, the titanium washer. Clutch cover bolts, so this would be the primary clutch cover. 10mm bolts that go. We have an aftermarket clutch cover, looks something like this. It would go in there, and your primary clutch bolt. We also have a primary limiting washer that's titanium, so we think that's pretty sweet. This is kind of a new one. The stock one's 1.27mm. Ours is 2.53. This limits the primary clutch, stops some belt issues, some overheating issues. The belt slap, if you hear a lot of belt slap, stuff like that, primary clutch limiting washer is definitely important. We also have the secondary Teflon washers. These allow the secondary spring to slide better and not bind, or if you had a broken secondary spring, you know why. The binding is not a good thing. So these will increase the spring tension of the spring about 10 pounds. And we have shims, so if you're a secondary clutch, you notice that it's spinning when you're in neutral, hard hits when you do shift into drive. It's hanging up a lot, and most of it, you just hear it spinning in neutral. We can shim the clutch side to side and get it lined up with the primary, and we'll kind of show you how that works in the car. And of course, yeah, the P90X clutch cover, these are pretty sweet from us. These are a billet cover. We hook the back of the clutch towers with them. We have a retainer clip for the bushing. We also have secondary compression tools, and of course, the primary removal tool. In addition to all the cool new titanium stuff, we do have the titanium lug nuts. These are an M12 by 1.5, so they're not specific to the Pro R. Really, M12 by 1.5 is like every, that's a really common lug nut across the whole automotive industry and across all the side-by-sides too. So these are super sweet. I know a lot of the factory stuff, the factory torque spec from Polaris, I think they had said it was like 145. We torque these, which is kind of an important note, to around 90 foot-pounds, between 80 and 105 foot-pounds is a pretty good torque spec. You definitely do not want to over-torque the titanium ones. Guys already have enough issues over-torquing the stock ones to the recommended 145. That's way too much. I want to dive into the car, kind of show you where some of these parts go, what they do, and why they're better. Obviously with titanium, less rotating mass, that's a good thing. Less rotating mass, and it's gonna spin up a little bit faster. Obviously we talked about the limiter washer, which stops the overshifting on the Pro Rs, and a lot of P90Xs in general, it's Pro XP also. Let's jump in this car real quick. I wanna show you where some stuff goes. Maybe a quick little instructions on how to do some of this stuff. All right, so you've got your primary bolt in here. These are your primary clutch cover bolts and your weight pins that we talked about. So we offer these in titanium. The torque spec on those is 20 inch-pounds, 8.3 foot-pounds on these, 140 foot-pounds on the primary. Secondary is 55 foot-pounds. The titanium bolts for the helix on the back of the secondary are 44 foot-pounds. So that's kind of a quick rundown. The really important ones are these at 8.3, and these at only 20 inch-pounds. So those are the ones that we see guys having issues with the most, over-torquing, over-braking them, stuff like that. So I'm gonna zip this thing apart real quick, kind of show you some stock stuff versus our stuff, and go over a few things. All right, we're getting the stock primary bolt out of here. For the limiting washer, you do not need to pull the clutch, and you don't need to pull the clutch for any of our titanium hardware either on the primary. I wanna show you the limiting washer deal. So we get this clutch bolt out of here. We're gonna set it right here. This shaft is where your limiting washer is, and it's held on with an O-ring. So this thing doesn't really pull out, but if you kind of twist and pull at the same time, it pops out like that. There's a rubber O-ring holding on this gold washer, and that's gold washer is what we're gonna be replacing. So we're gonna leave this factory thick spring washer on there. We're simply just gonna twist and pull this off, and we're gonna put the titanium washer on, put it back in there. At this time, you can start replacing all your hardware with titanium hardware, and it goes that quick. So let me grab our titanium limiter washer. So again, factory 1.27 millimeters, ours 2.53 roughly. Push, twist, put this back in there. Just like that. We will reinstall the titanium clutch bolt. I'm gonna get it close with the ratchet and then retorque. All right, something I want to mention that's very important is that the titanium bolts, titanium does not stretch. Steel stretches. So the idea is that you don't need as much torque on these large bolts as you would a factory bolt. So 65 foot-pounds is what we run our titanium primary bolts at. So on our website, it's what we recommend it. A drop of Loctite and 65 foot-pounds, these are good to go. All right, guys, so quick comparison of the two. This is what we have going on. As you can see, we've got a retention clip for the bushing, where the factory one doesn't. Ours is held on with this billet section, which the factory doesn't. We have these little incorporated fans, and this is your factory one. This is 6061 billet. This one's cast. So with that being said, you can see there's like some alignment marks, some balancing stuff that goes with the factory one. We don't have that because these are precisely machined and they're not cast. There's no inconsistency. So this would go on top of there with the spring and everything like that. As you can see, we lock in the back right here. Even on the sides, we lock into these towers and really does not let the clutch arms move, so no exploding primaries due to that. For now, we're gonna leave this apart. Let's move to the secondary real quick. I wanna show you some stuff on here. All right, so when you pull your secondary bolt, you're gonna notice there's some shims back here. These are the alignment shims we're talking about. This car has 3 of them. We've seen a few where they have 2. At the factory, it's dragging. There's so many variables, especially with cast clutches, that can cause inconsistency. So essentially what we have going on here, let's get this belt out of the way, this is your secondary clutch. All right, so here's your secondary clutch. Simply comes apart like this. This is a brand new car. This car has 0 miles on it, so obviously everything is gonna look good. But right now on your Pro R is a really good time to make sure that all these rollers are all good. Nothing's wild looking, broken, anything going on. If you're doing a clutch kit, now's a good time to replace your helix. And that's when these titanium bolts come into play. These 3 gold bolts are the 3 titanium bolts that we offer for the secondary. And we will pop this one open, but essentially there's a spring in here, a secondary spring, and the butter shift washer goes behind there and allows the spring to not bind as much. So we'll take this thing apart real quick on the bench over there, and we will get these installed, the titanium bolts installed, torqued down. We'll get the secondary back in the car, and I'll show you how to shim it. All right, guys, so we're gonna drop our clutch tool in there. This tool is offered a couple different ways. You got it like this, or the cup tool. It's ours because it says our name on it. Drop this on here. A couple washers. We'll snug this down with a wrench. We're gonna zip up them bolts. "32 days later." All right, guys, so now you've got your Teflon washers. You just drop both of them in. It's 2, they go on top of each other. This goes back in there. We're gonna tighten it all back down. Before we take it apart, I usually do put a little mark on it, just keep everything lined up. If you're reusing your stock helix, just something I like to do. All right, guys, so moving on to the titanium shims for the Pro R. Essentially, you're gonna get 8 shims. And there's no perfect number, and there's no magic number on where these need to be as far as alignment. The best way to do it is just start with probably your factory setting, 3, or before you take it apart, take your phone and you're going to take a picture looking down the clutch. You're gonna look for something that looks like, that. And you will be able to see, obviously you'll have your belt on, your belt will be to one side or to the other side, and essentially it's dragging on the primary. So if it's too far this way, you would want to do less shims. That will pull your, so less shims pulls your secondary this way. More shims pushes it in that way. So as you tighten it, it will shove it will push it that way. So less shims this way, more shims that way. We will get this thing rolling. We got our secondary bolt in. We're going to torque this to 55 foot-pounds. All right, guys, so we've got our clutch pin washers, we've got our clutch cover on, we've got the titanium bolts, titanium seconds, titanium everything is installed. We've got the titanium limiter in there. It's time to see if this thing's aligned right. So we're gonna spin this thing by hand a few times, maybe get in the car, fire it up. We'll put it in neutral, let it spin, drive forward, drive backwards, get it just in the perfect spot. And we're gonna look down the belt again, take a picture and see if it's to the left, if it's to the right, and make our adjustments from there. All right, guys, so we ran the car. I ended up making one more shim change. I added one, brought it back a little bit, and I think I have it pretty dialed in. This is kind of what we're looking for, is something like this. And we'll drop kind of like this perfect scenario photo in the video there. But I guess what I'm getting at is there's no magical equation for what car should have how many shims. And really, this car could go 500 miles and need another shim added or a shim removed, or maybe something changes later on, a different helix, stuff wears in. You know, you could be making a change every 1,000 miles or something like that, you know. And some guys may never need to make a change. So if you do, we offer the titanium shims. If not, that's cool too. If your car is shifting smooth, no issues, let it be. So that's it. I think we covered everything. You know, always revert to your manual for the torque specs. I know we covered a lot of them in here, but that could change with model years. This is a 25 model. You may have a 22, 24. Things could have changed. Torque specs could have changed. But I'm glad we got to go through this and show you guys a little bit of everything of what, you know, we offer and what they do and the changes those things make and how to install them. Hopefully this is helpful. And if you have any questions, you know, drop it in the comments. We do monitor our comments pretty well, so we're able to get in there within, you know, 2 or 3 days and at max and answer them. So during the week, we usually get to you pretty quick. So if you have questions, comments, concerns, we'd love to hear it. RPMsidebyside.com, you can pick up all these parts.